I'm Tom Baker, this is Chasing Cars, and this is the Mazda CX-9, which has been updated in a few important ways for 2021. The CX-9 is one of the most popular 7-seat vehicles in Australia, and it's really no surprise why. I think it looks pretty good, but it's actually the driving dynamics that set the CX-9 apart from lesser rivals like the outgoing Toyota Kluger. Plus, the interior has always been pretty tidy since this generation launched back in 2016. In fact, it's hard to believe the CX-9 is going to turn 5 years old this year because it's just held up so well. And nowhere is that more evident than here in the interior of this full-size Mazda SUV, which looks handsome and is constructed from really good materials. But one thing was starting to let the CX-9 down over the last few years, and that was outdated infotainment. The previous 8-inch screen just looked small and low resolution, and the software kind of sucked. Mazda has now rectified that for 2021 though, because we have a 10.25-inch screen here, taken from the CX-30 and the new Mazda 3, and it looks much more professional, more advanced, newer, and it's higher resolution as well. So the map looks better, you can put wired Apple CarPlay or Android Auto through the screen and it takes up the entire width. All in all, it's just a better system. Now it's still driven through a rotary controller down here, and it's kind of funny because when this generation of CX-9 came out, we not made fun of it, but we mentioned that the CX-9 was a lot like the Audi Q7 in adopting rotary driven infotainment. Well, the Q7 has now dropped that and has this sort of gaudy twin touchscreen layout that isn't as good, leaving the Mazda as sort of the standard bearer of better controls for when you're actually driving. And we still have a really nice, attractive small steering wheel, which means the CX-9 doesn't feel like a bus, and generally clear instruments, although there isn't a digital speedo outside of the heads-up display, which can be difficult to see at certain points in time. Now, the version of the CX-9 I'm sitting in is a new trim called the GT SP. It gets black wheels outside and this burgundy leather inside. It's about 67.5 grand for the all-wheel drive, which makes it about 7 grand less expensive than the most expensive CX-9, but you still get most things you'd want, including really, really good Bose audio and a sunroof. It's slightly let down by the fact there isn't a 360-degree camera, and the daytime running lights and indicators are still halogen, which looks a little bit old school. But every CX-9 has great interior materials. Plush on the dash and doors, down here where your leg rests, a generous armrest. Everything is screwed together very lovingly in the Mazda, and it's just a lovely car to spend time in. Let's check out the second row. One considerable change to the CX-9 for 2021 is that on the top spec Azami LE, you now get 6 seats rather than 7, and in the second row they're laid out in a captain's chair configuration for maximum comfort. Now in the GTSP that I'm in, and all of the other grades bar the LE, you still get a 7-seat setup, 2 in the front, 3 in the middle, and 2 in the back. And this is the way most people will probably continue to want their CX-9. And the middle row is a good one. Space is excellent, so I've got my driving seat in my own position. I've still got good headroom, another couple of inches despite the sunroof. Legroom is really capacious, and tow room is good too. Now you can get someone in the middle, it's not too much of a perch, and those in the second row enjoy the coverage of air vents back here with a separate fan and temperature zone, and the outboard seats are heated, so you can see that the GTSP is actually a pretty good spec. There's also integrated manual sun blinds that mean the sun will be kept off the face of any little ones that are put in here with the outboard ISOFIX points, and we have an armrest with 2 cup holders, flockline storage, and 2 more fast charging USB ports here in the back. Now, of course, you'd only buy the CX-9 if you thought you were going to use the third row on a regular or semi-regular basis, so we'll overlay some footage here of me hopping into that third row to judge it on how much space there is, at least for adults. As you may have also noticed, the other addition to the CX-9 for 2021 is that polymetal grey is now on the colour palette. This colour, which was originally released on the Mazda 3, often looks better in person than in the photo, so you'll have to let me know your thoughts down below this video. But in combination with the black wheels, it's certainly a progressive choice. Personally, I think the CX-9 in machine grey over silver wheels continues to be a really classy choice, as do the rarer Mazda colours like deep crystal blue and titanium flash, but that's all very subjective. Now we have a powered tailgate here around the back of the CX-9. That operates relatively promptly, and it opens up to reveal a generous 810 litre boot when you're using the vehicle in 5-seat configuration. And hopefully you can see just how far back that boot actually stretches. It's a good amount of space, and you'll easily get a pram in the back of this large SUV that measures in at over 5 meters. And on that point, it won't fit in every garage, so you'll need to check that quickly. So you'll need to check that carefully before buying this quite long crossover. Now, if we put the third row seats in place, which is reasonably easy, though it is manual, you reduce boot capacity to 230 litres. But even with them both up, there's enough room for the school bags here in the back, meaning that if you are on the school run duty for your kids and their friends, the CX-9 will be a relatively flexible choice. Then the door itself isn't too high. We have a control to lower that nice and easily, which means we can get into the driver's seat of the CX-9 and see why this Mazda SUV is not only head and shoulders above most of its regular competition on the road, but actually puts several German luxury SUVs twice the price to shame. So, what's the updated Mazda CX-9 like to drive? Well, it's still really good. Basically, the 2021 update is a running change, really designed to keep the technology up to speed and also to refine the CX-9 lineup to be as attuned as possible to the tastes of the Australian market. Hence the introduction of a more luxurious LE at the top of the range with captain's chairs, and also the filling, I guess, with this GT grade to become the GT SP with black wheels, a bit more of a kind of black pack style car. Now, if you've been a subscriber for a while, you know that I don't really like black packs, but I can recognize that the GT SP is actually a really good spec because you get the blend of features that you would really want on a CX-9 without too many superfluous items that you don't really need. But all CX-9s share the same mechanical package. The only difference is whether you opt for front-wheel drive, which is standard, or all-wheel drive, which is a $4,000 option. Now, the engine is a 2.5 litre turbocharged petrol 4-cylinder, and Mazda settled on this engine for the CX-9 when they were researching the current generation, and they worked out that most people that own a car like this, they just accelerate softly off the line. They never really rev it out. So they realized that they wanted a petrol fed but torquey engine, and what they came up with was pretty good. So we've got 170 kilowatts of power and 420 newton meters of torque, which is heaps of torque for a petrol 4-cylinder that isn't really designed to be a performance car. And in a lot of ways, this engine reacts like a diesel. It's very, very muscular at the low end, and it just always feels like it's got enough power in reserve. And I've driven a lot of current gen CX-9s. I've driven this engine in this car up and down the Alps of New Zealand, and it just always has enough torque. It's a great motor. And while it behaves like a diesel and has a sort of torque of a diesel, it just doesn't drink like a diesel. Fuel consumption has never been the CX-9's strong point, and it will basically do somewhere between 10 to 12 litres per 100 kilometres pretty much no matter what. Of course, if fuel consumption is the main goal for you, then you can opt for the CX-8, which is mostly narrower than the CX-9 and a little bit shorter. That uses a 2.2 litre twin turbo diesel 4-cylinder, which is way, way more efficient. But the car doesn't look as pretty, the ratio of the lines is a bit off, and the extra width of the CX-9 really helps if you're going to be having kids sitting side by side. It's a meaningfully better car in a lot of ways, the Mazda CX-9. Now, what's always amazed people that love to drive about the current CX-9 is just how excellent the dynamics of this vehicle are. This is a 7-seat family car that measures in at just under 5.1 meters, and it weighs 2 tons, and yet it behaves like a vehicle a meter shorter and 500 kilos lighter. The ride and handling balance is just impeccable. The ride quality is so good on the CX-9, even on 20-inch wheels, which most of the variants have, even without adaptive dampers, which are not available on the CX-9, even without air suspension, which is not available, that it makes you wonder exactly what the problem is at BMW, Audi, and Mercedes-Benz, where if you're buying one of their large SUVs, you have to very carefully specify the right wheel, tyre, damper, and suspension package to get an acceptable ride quality. Because as Mazda demonstrates, you actually don't need any of that stuff in order for the car to ride properly, as the CX-9 does. The ride is an almost perfect blend between body control and genuine compliance in town. When you strike a pothole in the CX-9, it's absorbed so well, despite the fact that we're riding on these larger wheels, that there's absolutely no need to opt for the small wheel on the CX-9, because no matter what you choose, the suspension quality is very, very good on this car. And of course that means it's going to be easier to put kids to sleep on a long drive, but it just means that as the years and the kilometers roll on with you and the Mazda CX-9, you'll enjoy just a higher quality of life from the fact that this car doesn't judder through bumps and send those sorts of knocks up into your spine. It really does make a difference. The same goes for all the plush materials in the cabin. You know, everything about this car is kind of luxuriously and softly set up, and yet the CX-9 can actually boogie on a twisting country road. A colleague of mine once referred to it as a ginormous hot hatch, and I'm not entirely sure that's 100% accurate, but I can see exactly what they meant. It's that the steering of the CX-9 is so good, is that it turns in better than you'd expect. It's that it moves and shuffles its multi-link independent rear end around. You feel what the car is doing beneath you. So, if it's a family car Monday to Friday, but then you get the CX-9 out for a fast blast on a country road on the weekend, a keen driver will absolutely find something to enjoy here, which is not something you can say about many big buses for the family, that's for sure. It's also a terribly refined car, terribly in a good sense. It's very hushed. Mazda's bad old days of road noise are long behind this company now, but particularly in cars like the CX-9 and the Mazda 6 large passenger car, they are quiet inside with little road or wind noise, almost nothing by way of vibration and harshness. These are good, refined feeling cars. So the main issues with how it drives are the fact you've got to spend 4K on all-wheel drive, which is important when you have this much torque running through the front wheels. You have the fuel consumption bill of the petrol, which is something that you just need to take into account with this vehicle's ongoing running costs. And that's really about it. I would point out that the GTSP doesn't have a 360-degree camera. That should be standard on all CX-9s because these are big vehicles and it's difficult to park. It won't fit in everybody's garage, and you do need to learn the dimensions of the car if you're going to be driving something this enormous. But the basic safety package is pretty good. We've got AEB, including reversing AEB on all grades, which Mazda beat virtually every other rival to the punch on including. We've also got adaptive cruise control. We have lane departure warning. That's a bit of a weak point. We don't have the kind of bang-on lane keep assist of something like a Volkswagen Touareg. We have blind spot monitoring with rear cross traffic alert, and we have a reversing camera with front and rear parking sensors, but yes, no 360-degree camera. You can get that on the higher grade, but it should be range wide. So that's a detailed look at the updated 2021 Mazda CX-9. Even in the latter half of this SUV's lifespan, it's still shockingly good in almost every way. The driving dynamics are head and shoulders above most of this vehicle's rivals, and even better than new entrants like the Hyundai Palisade, and the interior continues to be a comfortable and plush space to spend time. So it's really no surprise that the CX-9 continues to be really popular with big families here in Australia. Like any car, it's not perfect. But it's clear when Mazda engineered this generation of CX-9, they carefully researched what a vehicle like this should be about. And that's why it's standing the test of time. But I'm keen to know your thoughts, so let me know down below this video what you think of the 2021 CX-9. While you're there, make sure to hit subscribe if you haven't joined us already. And as always, thanks for watching Chasing Cars.